It's a massive divisional matchup this weekend for the Minnesota Vikings as they take on the 4-game losing streak Chicago Bears, because the Minnesota Vikings, even though they have an 8-2 record, they are right on the heels of the Detroit Lions. But the Green Bay Packers are also on the heels of the Minnesota Vikings, and they face the San Francisco 49ers, which is not a lock of a win for the Packers. So it'd be nice for the Vikings to get a little space there, get a win versus the Bears, have the Packers lose against the 49ers. You get a little gap. So it's a big weekend, even though the Chicago Bears are not competing for a playoff spot and will not be this season. You want to continue your winning ways and do all of that. So we're going to dive into a preview of the Vikings versus Bears matchup. A few things to look at in this game. And let's just start by talking about the history. The Vikings are going to Soldier Field. And of course, the idea or mythology, I'm going to say, is that the Minnesota Vikings never win in Soldier Field. It's on the road. It's at Chicago. It's cold. Everyone gets hurt on their grass. It's slippy. But can we get over this idea that the Vikings never win at Soldier Field? The last 4 appearances, 2020, Vikings win 19-13. 2021, Vikings win 17-9. 2022, Vikings win 29-13. 2023, Vikings win 19-13. Soldier Field is not the dreaded place that it used to be. The Vikings can win there. History has flipped itself on its head because the last 4 years, the Minnesota Vikings have won at Soldier Field. So there's no reason why we should hold that against the team anymore. It used to be the Vikings can't win at Soldier Field. Brett Favre 2009, I remember it. Vikings lost at Soldier Field. But that was 15 years ago. This myth is just that. It's a myth. It's something that happened a long time ago, a lot, and now we kind of carry it into today. Oh, the Vikings can't win at Soldier Field. Oh, my gosh, we got to go to Soldier Field. It's not true anymore. We're 4-0 in our last 4 games at Soldier Field. In the 2020s, the Vikings have not lost at Soldier Field against the Chicago Bears. So you can get that idea out of your head. You might be thinking that going into the game because you hear it so often. Oh, Vikings can't win at Soldier Field. Oh, my gosh. We're going to lose again. Mark it as a loss. Hopefully we beat them at home. In fact, beating the Bears at home, since 2020, the Vikings are 2-2. Okay? 2-2. 2023, they lost to the Bears at home. 2022 and 2021, they won. And 2020, the Vikings lost to the Bears at home. So this is a very winnable game for the Minnesota Vikings. So let's dive into some of the details behind this game. So the Chicago Bears enter the game with a 4-6 record. And here are their wins and losses via ESPN.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'll describe it to the podcast audience what I'm seeing. All right. This is what stands out to me. You look at their last 4 losses, 20-19 to the Green Bay Packers on a blocked field goal, 19-3 Patriots, 29-9 Arizona, Washington 18-15. Caleb Williams has not thrown a touchdown pass since week 6 against the Jacksonville Jaguars, which means he's not on his game. The Minnesota Vikings defense should be able to dominate the Chicago Bears offense. But what is going to make this game challenging is that the Chicago Bears defense is legit. Only 3 times this season have they given up 20 or more points. They did it against the Packers on Sunday. They did it against the Arizona Cardinals on Sunday, November 3rd. They gave up 29 points. And then they did it earlier in the year against the Indianapolis Colts, where they lost 21-16. So the goal for the Minnesota Vikings offense on Sunday is to score 20 points. Because if they do that, there is no way the Minnesota Vikings should lose this game. That's the goal. Whether it's by field goals or touchdowns, score 20 points. Because the Chicago Bears offense is so inept that should be enough. This feels like a ball game that will be low scoring just because of the two teams going at each other. Good defenses, offenses have been up and down. Well, the Bears offense has been mostly down recently. The Vikings offense showed a lot against the Tennessee Titans. They only put up 23 points, though. And against the Colts, offense struggled. Against the Jaguars, offense struggled. So the Minnesota Vikings offense, they got a tune-up against the Tennessee Titans, which is a good thing before this matchup. So this kind of feels like a very low-scoring ball game. But the Minnesota Vikings' goal needs to be to score 20 points in this game because the Chicago Bears are 0-3 when that happens. And then you look at the Chicago Bears wins. 24-17, they beat the Titans. 24-18, they beat the Rams. 36-10, they beat Carolina. 35-16, they beat Jacksonville. So a lot of their wins, besides the Rams game, which the Rams didn't have most of their key players yet in that game, are against bottom feeders in the league. Jaguars, Panthers, Titans, and then the Rams without Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp. So there's no way the Vikings should lose this game. And they lost to the Washington Commanders 18-15 on a Hail Mary, 29-9 Arizona, 19-3 New England, Green Bay 2019. So the Chicago Bears offense, they've been really bad recently, but they've been inconsistent throughout this season. Caleb Williams went on a small early season run where he's putting together touchdown passes. But like I mentioned earlier, he has not thrown a touchdown pass since week 6. And Brian Flores, I expect, and I think most people expect him to dominate Caleb Williams in this game. Rookies are 1-7 against teams with a Brian Flores defensive coordinator or head coach. Okay, when Brian Flores is the defensive coordinator or head coach, rookies are 1-7. Okay, they struggle. Offenses with rookie signal play callers average 15.5 points scored and 3.8 sacks allowed per game. They have 9 giveaways and 7 total touchdowns. So Brian Flores' defense mess with opposing offensive coordinators, opposing young rookies. And we saw that earlier in the year. CJ Stroud talked about it. Brock Purdy talked about it. And I would expect Caleb Williams to talk about it as well. And I'm getting that stat courtesy of Vikings.com. And Vikings.com, they do a good job previewing the game and giving some stats and some statistics coming from players and things like that. Here's a good one from Vikings.com. It says, and I'll share the screen with those YouTube watchers who can follow along with me. It says, in 10 games, Williams has clipped 61.8% of his throws for 2,016 yards and rushed 49 times for 306. He recently produced the strangest stat. Williams is the first quarterback per Elias with 20-plus attempts without a touchdown or interception in 4 straight contests. His last touchdown pass was October 13th before the Bears went on a bye week in Week 7. So you would expect that the Minnesota Vikings would be able to slow down the Bears offensively. If the Bears score more than 20 points in this ballgame, something went wrong on the Minnesota Vikings defense because they have historically this season proven that they can't do that. When's the last time they scored 20 points? Week 6 against the crappy Jaguars. So it shouldn't happen here against the Minnesota Vikings. Looking at some other stats, last game of the what? 1 second here. What's going on here? Last game of the 3-game road trip for the Vikings. They had to travel to Jacksonville. They had to travel to the Titans. They had to travel to Chicago. And what was so good about the scheduling this year is that the Vikings played the 49ers at home. They played the Texans at home. 2 tough matchups that would have been hard to win on the road. And they got the easy matchups on the road. Jags on the road, Titans on the road, and Chicago Bears. Of course, they're a divisional matchup, so you play them on the road every year. So, prediction in this ball game. I'm going to predict that the Minnesota Vikings win this football game 16-13. I was going to say 21-16, but it feels like the Vikings are not going to score a touchdown on every single possession. Okay? The Chicago Bears defense is good, but the Chicago Bears offense is bad. So I think it's going to be a low-scoring, ugly football game. You've got to somehow manage your way through turnovers and through mistakes on both sides. And the Minnesota Vikings come away with a victory 16-13. And they move to 5-0 at Soldier Field in the last 5 games. Remember, don't believe the myth that they can't win in Chicago. They can and they have. And they should this weekend as well.